Welcome to It's Meaningless. It's Meaningless. This is the podcast for startup entrepreneurs who are tired of stuck and are ready to face the brutal truth. Here we uncover the meaningless daily habits that keep you from protecting and growing in life and in business. This is. So I stopped counting a while ago, but I think this is episode 30. Um, yeah. So we'll go with episode 30. Anyway, um, so there is. There's this movie. Uh, what is it? I think it's called MB. I don't know. I don't think it was kind of. I saw it. I caught it on DVD. Obviously, that was a while ago. Uh, but I don't know if it like kind of those movies that don't really hit. I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Anyway, but I caught it on DVD. It was Jack Black and I think Ben Stiller. Anyway, the movie is these two guys. They're working in this little factory. Obviously, like I guess the picture is them, I guess, working these menial jobs. Obviously, not making any money. Um, and so, uh, Jack Black's character, uh, well, yeah, he comes up with this idea. Um, and they eventually call it vaporize, which is this product that like you spray it on dog poop, uh, and it disappears. So of course he becomes a multi whatever millionaire whatever, selling this thing, and but eventually you know how companies get big and then there's always some scandal that comes from somewhere. Uh, Eventually he's I guess the public outcry is like, where does the where does it go? Effectively, like, where does the crap go? So that's the thing that we kind of ask here. Um, so with the society that we live in, like we like all the advertisements, pretty much all the advertisements. Obviously not all of them, but a good portion of them, like really close to all of them. Like, this is just me. Um, from my from the way the things I've seen, probably about 90% of the advertisements you see out there have some level um of a claim for, like, we're taking the risk away, either no risk or um, lower risk. So that is sort of the advertisement, the promise for the product or the service that's been delivered. And of course, not necessarily in the words risk free or using the word risk, but that's the claim in a lot of the promotions, which kind of goes to beg the question is like, with all of the risk, um, the promises for reducing risks, for taking risk away, um, at the end of the day, it's like, so apparently everybody can just pay money. And in other words, if you have enough, you can pay enough money to where you live a life with effectively zero risk. Of course, it's not true. Like, there's always some level of risk, but practically speaking, day in and day out, in the day to day, that you can pay enough money, supposedly, to live a life that's risk free. So, and like I said, in some respects, it's true. Um, but the question is, like, obviously, the market That is, our customers um, have an aversion to risk. In other words, the market pays for, is willing to pay for. Um, yeah, is willing to pay for assurance, certainty. But the thing that goes, the thing that goes unsaid is how how risky like markets are. Well, how risky this world is. How much risk is just latent in the world we live in. Um, I guess part of why I bring up the advertising is because effectively it's like conditioning. It's kind of conditioned a lot of us to believe that like okay, well, stuff just happens. Um, Part of what I liken this to a little bit is like if you've ever gone camping, um, and I don't mean glamping. I mean like camping, like at the very least you're setting up a tent. Um, uh, that's more than maybe 20 feet from your truck. Um, but like really camping, um, if you've ever done it, like one of the things that's um, really notable, at least in the times that I've gone, is like how much time it takes to do what would normally be simple stuff. Um, like if you go on and especially if you've gone like what they call primitive camping, isn't like kind of deep woods, isn't you hike in, um, and pretty much have whatever's in your backpack. Um, that kind of camping, um, and even just regular tent camping, um, you start to notice like, okay, how am I gonna get water? Hopefully you brought some. Um, but if you're going on a longer trip, like you have to go find it. Um, how do I get, um, in other words, getting some food cooked, which is a whole ordeal by itself. Getting the bed ready, like just setting up a regular tent, setting up the tent, getting down whatever you're using for bedding, whatever. That takes a good bit of time. So it's like, but these days, like, I mean, because of like what we're used to, like people, we bought homes, we paid for apartments, I don't know, paid for all the furnishings and all the stuff. And so realistically, like that whole process of, okay, getting something to eat, okay, go home, stick something in the microwave, um, 2 minutes later, like you're eating. Um, Time for bed, okay, turn out the light, bathroom, brush your teeth, whatever, go to bed. Um, I mean, there's nothing, it's nothing really to think about. Nothing to slave over, nothing to work for, because it's already done. It's like it's pre-made, it's done. Um, and so that is kind of just one example um, of how, at the very least, the complexity, which a lot of times is associated with risk, the complexity has been taken out of certain tasks, certain things. Um, but then there's a lot of ways that um, there's a lot of ways that like besides that happens in our lives. Obviously, like the cars we drive, like instead of walking, um, I don't know, walking 5 miles, and taking, I don't know, whatever, however long it takes to walk 5 miles, a couple hours, hour and a half, um, and doing that back and forth to work, like we can drive to like 40 miles to work in like 45, 50 minutes without traffic. But yeah, um, so like I guess the point here is we have all this stuff set up. Um, that is, and I'm talking about we as in we as consumers. We have all this stuff set up for easier living. And so, like, the question is like, when all these promises come out, when all these things come out for risk free, um, yeah, for risk free, for risk less, like who, in other words, where's it go? Who bears the who bears the brunt of that? Who pays for that? Like, where does it go? Because in other words, it's like the vaporized thing. It's like it can't just disappear. Like, where does it go? So the short answer is it goes to us. And us, by us, now I'm talking about us as entrepreneurs. Um, and frankly, like that's kind of this conversation, this topic is one of the most um, basic, as in base, foundational, um, foundational topics of business. In other words, of business, of what it is, of how it works, is this topic of risk and where it goes and how it flows. Because effectively, like in some way or another, in other words, I say 90% of businesses seem to advertise this risk thing, uh, that is risk less, risk free. Um, but realistically, it kind of is, in one way or another, it kind of is what what businesses sell. It's why businesses or consumers are willing to trade their dollars for a service or a product that a business offers. So, like with that said, in other words, when we put it in this context, in other words, we as entrepreneurs are saying, hey, look, we will guarantee you, Johnny Consumer, um, that um, in the case of my little widget, this widget will make your life easier because it'll, I don't know, help you grow more hair and have more confidence, and thereby it'll decrease your risk of, um, I don't know, looking bad in front of the ladies. Um, so, and obviously that's just a little scenario, but um, that's the promise we make. So, in making that promise, um, that's effectively our value in the market. That we can provide some level of assurance that X won't happen or Y will. In other words, that one thing will happen or that another one. Um, which is what people are willing to pay for. So the whole thing of, I guess the why this topic is so important is because, like, if you don't understand as an entrepreneur, if you don't understand that at the end of the day, like, you are taking on risk in your business. In other words, you are adopting and taking on the risk of your consumers. You're pulling it onto you. Um, it can mess you up if you don't understand that. Because in other words, it's easy to see, oh man, I'm pulling in these dollars. Um, like they're paying me, like we're getting paid. Great, great, great. But um, if you miss the fact that you have now assumed their risk for whatever it is that your product, your service solves, um, then you can be out of business fairly quickly. And how, might you ask? Um, so part of the thing that I'll go here first. Like part of the ways that business owners a lot of times, man, a lot of times, don't really um, pay attention to this is in finances. Um, like it's easy to see, like I said, it's easy to see money coming in, money coming in, money coming in, and obviously, like you have expenses, so you get your expenses taken care of, hopefully. Um, but um, a lot of times, business owners see like what's left over and think, okay, well, we're good. We got some money. And the thing is, it's like in truth, like you're not done with expenses yet. In other words, you may have paid for whatever the current expenses are. You may have paid for all your inventory. You may have paid for um, all your vendor fees, but um, there's still some claims on this money. Um, and so I've seen where businesses go in two different directions. So some business owners will um, they'll go in the direction of charging less, kind of either yeah, charging less. Effectively, I'll call it low margins. So they either charge less to the customer, which pulls in lower margins, or they pay the employees a bunch, um, either in direct pay or um, like other incentives or whatever. And don't get me wrong, like pay your employees well, like not don't skip on the employees. Um, like if you're gonna find something to skip on, don't do that. At least that's the way I like to do it. But um, at the same time, there is a thing of paying them too much to the point of where like you don't have much margin left over. Um, effectively, and margin really is the topic here, um, or the biggest point here in this part of the conversation, because effectively, um, it it has the same result as the other scenario, which is where there is margin left over, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is extra money, so you spend it, you take withdrawals, um, you go out and, which is kind of good. I mean, go out and make um, aggressive, too aggressive investments into new things, which like I said, it's good because eventually it'll pay off, hopefully, if it's a good investment. Um, but the problem is if it leaves you with no cash on hand, in a scenario, then that kills your business just as well. So ultimately, like businesses will come down to the place where like or they'll just run like where they're just low on cash, and don't really think much of it because it's like, okay, the bills get paid, I'm getting paid, um, and they think, okay, but that's it. But the problem is like when you're selling this widget, um, and there are multiple scenarios. And I'll use this one. I don't like litigation, but it happens. So I'll use this one. Um, like you're selling your widget and um, that effectively helps um, Johnny Consumer grow his hair. And Johnny Consumer grows his hair and he's using your widget to help him do it. And I don't know, it turns his hair green. And turns his hair green and it all falls out in one day. And so of course now he's trying to sue you. At that point, um, financially speaking, it's like how do you pay for that? Um, which realistically, um, depending on the his case, depending on how well his case is, like there's a slew of attorneys out there who will take his case, um, and take it on without making him pay a dime whatsoever because they are, um, again, like they're selling risk free too. They're certain they're taking on the risk that they can sue you and make you pay money. Um, so there are lots of attorneys out there that can do that. With that said, the way they work, the way they will work, is like they'll drag you. In other words, they can have you in court for years and years. And so at that point, it's like, can you afford the cost of an attorney um, throughout the duration of that kind of thing, that kind of engagement? Um, and so, really, I'll say, and I'll give another example. So that's one. When you get sued. Another is, as far as transferring risk, um, or keeping the risk or having the risk of your customer. Um, in addition to being or to having to face like legal troubles or whatever, effectively risk wise, you also um, can run into a scenario where um, um, production just takes longer, whatever. In other words, you're producing, you're trying to produce this thing. So in other words, I'm in software development. Um, and um, I have played around in our industry. Most of the software products that come out, in terms of custom software, are usually built by time and materials. Um, which means effectively is kind of an hourly rate charge to whoever the customer is. Um, now, in a scenario where, and I've played around with this in a few scenarios, but in a scenario where I am taking on the risk of the customer, um, and I say, hey, look, I can do this project, almost like the attorney. I can do this project for X amount of dollars, and I give them a actual solid figure. Um, so I can say I can do this project for $200,000. Like that's the price. Um, so at that point, like I'm assuming, I guess I'm assuming whatever risk there is of that project costing more than that $2,000, $200,000. So if I'm if I am kind of charging um or actually taking, I guess, whatever payments that come in, whatever order they come in, taking those payments and um, kind of treating it like, okay, this is what's going to come in every month or whatever it is, even if the project is supposed to be on schedule. If I'm doing that and not like keeping margin on that, like keeping effectively accounting wise, it's equity, keeping equity. um, then like if the project runs long, if part goes bad, if whatever, um, I know our business would be effectively on the hook for like whatever goes wrong financially with the project, which means cash wise, like I need to have enough cash left over to cover that. Um, there's another thing I'm thinking of effectively because in other words, this isn't just for this industry. Um, Obviously, software as a service is a big deal. Like subscription based selling is a big deal, and actually, that's probably one of the bigger ones. Like if your business is like a subscription based model, that's one of the ones to pay attention to um, as well. Pretty much for the same reason I just mentioned. It's effectively like you're pulling in, at least in this case, like you're pulling in cash every month, every month, every month. But the problem is like if you don't, especially like if you have like a software product that you're selling, um, you need to take into consideration as far as the product is concerned, like what is it going to take to upkeep this thing? In other words, what is it going to take to do the necessary upgrades to this thing um, so that not only do you have customers now, but you continue to get new ones and the ones that you have keep coming back later. In other words, it's one thing to like put out a great product and like just leave it there as if like it's gonna be the greatest forever. Um, it's another thing to like operate as an entrepreneur, like a business owner, and put out that great product and continue to keep your finger on the pulse of your customers. Like what do they need? What needs to be improved on this so that you can continue to um, not only keep the revenue that you have, but continue to grow it. Because in other words, nothing stays static. In other words, you can't just build a product and throw it out there and have 100,000 subscribers show up and have all of them stay for the next 10, 15 years. It's just not, it just doesn't work like that. So um, that's the thing on risk. There's a lot of things that go into risk, and I may come back next time and talk about um, ways to more ways to reduce risk. It's one of the, so in fact for my business, that's one of the things that I offer to customers is risk less in terms of providing for software solutions that so like custom databases, um, accounting systems, stuff like that, effectively that actually make it across the finish line and work at the end of the day. In other words, work for what the intended purpose is the intended purpose is. Um, so That might be something that I come to talk about next time. But anyway, that's it for this time. Take care. Peace out.